Hey friends, this is Nathan, and welcome to Cautious Let's Play's Complete Guide to Harvest Moon Animal Parade Baby Making. That's right, in this video I'm going to discuss in detail exactly how the child system works in Harvest Moon Animal Parade. In this game, in my opinion, it has revolutionized the entire parenting system of the Harvest Moon franchise. And in addition to that, they've brought back in the rarely used two-child system. In most Harvest Moon games, you can have at least one child, but only in a handful of games can you have two. In one sense, this is almost a throwback to Harvest Moon for the Super Nintendo, which was not only the first in the franchise to allow two children, but the first in the franchise ever. So anyway, without further ado, let's get into the topic. Now, if you've been watching the LP, you know that Witch, or as we should probably call her Vivi, has recently told us that she would like to have a baby. We agreed, and now we are planning the birth of our child on this next episode. The child will be a girl. How do I know? Because the game let me choose. You see, whenever your spouse approaches you in Animal Parade about having children, and you agree, you're given three options. You can have a boy, a girl, or allow your spouse to choose. What's that, you say? Getting to choose the gender of your child is not realistic? Well, deal with it. Before we go any further, though, I'd like to explain why I chose a girl instead of a boy. The reason is for appearance sake. In this game, there are 4 different appearances for your child, and they're affected by their age and gender. You can have an older child and a younger child, and you can have a boy and a girl, thus 4 options. This is what the older boy looks like. This is what the older girl looks like. This is what the younger boy looks like, and this is what the younger girl looks like. The only thing that can really change about their appearance apart from these 4 pictures is their hair color. Their hair color will always match your spouse's color. So we can expect our kids to have kind of a freaky white, silver, grayish style. Anyway, the reason I choose a girl is because I like her appearance better than the older boy. In the future, I'll probably choose a younger boy over a younger girl because I like his appearance a little bit better. Besides all that, my wife once put a picture of me and her into one of those websites that's supposed to predict what your children will look like. Let's just say it wasn't very pretty. So, if I'm going to have ugly children in real life, I'd at least like my virtual children to look nice. Grant me that. Okay, the next thing I want to discuss is child growth. You better believe those kids don't come out looking like this. Actually, for the first 2 seasons of your child's life, they look something like this, and they just kind of lay there and don't really do much. But that's okay, because they grow up. In fact, after the child is born, you have a special new cutscene event every 2 weeks, marking important points in your child's development. Those events are 1. Learning to crawl, 2. Learning to walk, 3. Learning to talk, respectively. So our daughter will be born. 2 weeks later, we'll have a cutscene where she learns to crawl. 2 weeks after that, we'll have another cutscene where she learns to walk. And 2 weeks after that, we'll have another cutscene where she'll learn to talk. And finally, 2 weeks after that, we'll have a special event called Child Day, in which our baby will miraculously blossom into this fine, upstanding member of society. This brings me now to the most innovative aspect of the parenting system in Harvest Moon Animal Parade. In this game, your child develops its own unique personality, and you as a parent can help to shape that personality through the way you raise your child. At each of 4 of the events that I mentioned earlier, birthing, crawling, walking, and talking, your spouse will ask you a question about how you would like to raise your child. Your response at those events will affect your child's unique personality type. Now, this game allows for 4 different personality types. If you get most of your information from Harvest Moon Fogu, like I do, you'll know those types described as fiery, romantic, quiet, and scholarly. In addition to being determined by your parenting choices, your child's personality will also be affected by your spouse. Now, what I mean by that is this. Depending on who you marry, there is one personality type that your child cannot have, and it varies from spouse to spouse. If you marry Vivi, for example, like we have, your child cannot be a scholarly type, which makes me sad, because that's my favorite. Anyway, if you guys remember, I told you before that this video would be somewhat educational, and you may be wondering how. Well, I'll tell you. You see, this 4-part personality division is not something that's created by Natsume. This is based on a real-life, accurate personality profiling system. But the titles given in the game, fiery, scholarly, etc., are not entirely accurate. So let's forget about those titles for now. Instead, we'll classify the personality types to make an acronym, D.I.S.C, D.I.S.C. For most people, their personality can be accurately assessed using 2 of these 4 letters. For example, you might say a person's personality is a DI or an IS or a CD. But to explain the whole personality types, I'll back up a little bit. Assume that this page accounts for the full spectrum of personality possibility. The 4-part personality classification system is based on 2 major divisions. The first division is extroversion-introversion. All people can be described as either extroverted or introverted. Perhaps the degree may vary, but there's still one or the other. The second major division is based on being socially oriented or task-oriented. Some are more people-focused, and some are more task-focused. Again, there are varying degrees to which this is true, but all people fall into one of these 2 categories. Now, when you consider these 2 divisions, you end up with 4 possible personality types. A person can be either extroverted and task-oriented, extroverted and people-oriented, introverted and people-oriented, or introverted and task-oriented. And we'll give them the letters D, I, S, and C, respectively. That includes every single person watching this video. Everyone falls into these categories. Now, I imagine most people here are already beginning to figure out which personality type you are. But keep this in mind. No one personality type is better than any other, and each type has its own advantages and disadvantages. Let's look at each one in more detail and discuss their advantages and their disadvantages. Let's begin with the D personality type. This type is extroverted and task-oriented. That means someone who is a D can work and function well in groups of people, and they're good at accomplishing tasks. Now, we can assume that the letter D stands for something like dominant, because that describes the personality type quite well. The advantages to being a D is that they are very productive and they're very good natural leaders. The disadvantage is they kind of have a tendency to be a little pushy at times. The I personality type is extroverted and task-oriented. That means they get along great with other people and they are very, very social. In fact, there is no such thing as a stranger to an I. We can assume that I stands for inspirational. And the advantage of being an I is, well, they really are able to inspire and motivate people, and they get along with almost everyone. The disadvantage is, well, because they're not very task-focused, they can oftentimes get distracted by the promise of hanging out with people. The S personality type is introverted and people-oriented. Now, this gives them a quiet, kind of backstage role. They are people who would much prefer to play a supportive role while someone else takes the spotlight. So it's no surprise that we can say that S stands for supportive. The advantage of an S personality is that they are really helpful people in almost everything that they do, and they are very good at dealing with others on a one-on-one basis. The disadvantage is that they hate asserting themselves, so much so that oftentimes they'll get walked on by someone else, usually a D. Finally, the C personality type is both introverted and task-oriented. The result of that is a person who tends to be very focused on detail. We can say that C stands for contemplative. Now, the advantage to being a C is that they tend to do good quality, detailed work, and oftentimes they're very logical thinkers. The disadvantage is that they can get so caught up in the details sometimes that they miss the big picture. Also, they're not really as social as most other people. This is actually my primary personality type. I am primarily a C, secondarily an S. Well, to give a better overview of all the personality types, I'd like to appeal to the classic American comic Peanuts. Those funny stories about a young boy with a humorous beagle by Charles Schulz. Yeah, each of the 4 major characters in that comic demonstrates a different personality type. For example, Lucy is the D. Sure, she's a little bossy at times, but when it comes time to pick a director for the Christmas play, who do they all turn to? Lucy, because they know she's the type of leader that will get it done. Charlie Brown's famous dog, Snoopy, is a classic I. Everyone loves an I and everyone loves Snoopy because he's such a fun-loving dog. He's always having fun, fighting the Red Baron or playing a joke on Lucy or dancing or something. Everybody loves an I, though. Charlie Brown is a classic S. Even though he's the main character, notice that he doesn't really try to grab for the spotlight much. In fact, we find him oftentimes playing a supportive role, just trying to do his job and help out others. Finally, Linus is a C. He's the quiet kid who doesn't really get out and talk much, but he does seem to have well thought through answers for most things, probably from his quiet contemplation. When Charlie Brown wants to talk about a certain thing, Linus is always there, providing some sort of analytical insight. When Charlie Brown asks what the meaning of Christmas is, Linus is there to give his well thought through and memorized even answer from Luke chapter 2. So I hope that all of this has helped to explain personality types. But let's get back to Harvest Moon for a minute. I've already decided, for the most part, what personalities I'd like to give my virtual children. Since I can't choose C or scholarly because we're married to Vivi, I'll probably make my first child a romantic type or I type, and my second one a quiet type or S type. But there is something that I do need from you guys. A name. Give me a good name for an I personality girl and an S personality boy. I'll pick the suggested names that I like the best and I'll use them. So guys, I hope this has been informative and entertaining. I'll see you guys soon, and until then, stay frosty.
It is such a good night to kiss. It is such a good night to dance. It is such a good night to Scooby-Doo-Doo-Doo, Scooby-Doo-Doo-Doo, Scooby-Doo-Doo.